There is something you do every single day without realizing it. Something so habitual, so deeply wired into how you move through the world, that it has become invisible to you. You trust what you see on the surface. You walk into a room, read the faces, hear the words, and build a story. A complete, confident story. About who these people are, what they want, and whether they mean you well. And you are wrong. Almost every time. Not because you are unintelligent, but because you were never given the actual lens. The lens that reads beneath the surface. The lens that separates what is being performed from what is being plotted. The lens that Niccolò Machiavelli spent his entire life, his career, his exile, and his eventual obscurity trying to hand to anyone willing to take it. This video is a deep analysis of why so many people live trapped in confusion, betrayal, and powerlessness, and what happens when they finally choose to see the world as it actually operates. Not as they were taught it operates, not as they wish it operated, as it does. We are going to dismantle 7 perceptual locks, 7 invisible cages that keep intelligent people passive, predictable, and endlessly surprised by the same betrayals. By the end of this, you will think differently. You will see differently. You will be, in the most precise and unsettling sense of the word, dangerous. But I need you to understand something before we go one step further. What Machiavelli wrote was not cynicism. It was a dissection. A surgeon's knife is not cruel, it is precise. He looked at power, at human nature, at the mechanics of influence and loyalty and betrayal, and he described what he actually found, not what he hoped to find. What he found, and what he found will make some of you deeply uncomfortable. Some of you will want to label it dark. Some of you will call it manipulative. That reaction is itself one of the locks we will break today. So 7 shifts, 7 permanent, irreversible upgrades to how your mind processes reality. And once they click into place, you will never be the same person who started watching this video. Let's begin. Shift 1. Words are theater. Behavior is evidence. Here is something you experienced last week. Someone said they would get back to you. They didn't. Someone told you they were fine. They weren't. Someone promised they had changed. They hadn't. And you, being a reasonable person, kept updating your model of them based on what they said, not on what they did, what they said. And this is the first cage. And it was built in childhood. When you were young, words carried weight because the people around you had power over your survival. If a parent promised something, you had to believe it. Disbelief felt dangerous. Disbelief meant conflict, and conflict meant instability, and instability was the one thing a child cannot afford. So you learned at a very deep neurological level to take words seriously. That wiring served you then. It is destroying you now. Machiavelli watched princes, popes, and generals operate for 2 decades at the center of Italian political life. What he observed, stripped of all sentiment, was this. Words are the cheapest tool of power available to any human being. They cost nothing. They can be revoked at any moment, and they are extraordinarily effective at managing how other people perceive you, even when they bear no relationship to what you actually intend to do. He wrote that a ruler who is purely defined by his word in a world where others are not will ruin himself. That sounds brutal. Let me translate it into something you lived through. You had a friend who told you repeatedly that you mattered to them, that you were family, that they would always be there, and when the moment came when you actually needed them to be there, they were not. And you were blindsided, not because you were naive, but because you were measuring the wrong thing. You were measuring their words when the data was always in their behavior. Words are what people offer when they want to manage your expectations. Behavior is what they reveal when managing expectations gets too expensive. So the first shift is this. Stop listening to what people say. Start watching what they consistently do, not what they do once, not what they do when the stakes are low and the optics are easy. What they do when it costs them something, and that is who they are. Everything else is theater. Shift 2. Self-interest is not a flaw. It is the operating system, and this is where most people make the critical error. They hear, watch behavior, not words, and they apply it as a tool for identifying bad people. They use it to build a mental list of who to trust and who to cut. But they still operate under the assumption that once you identify the good people, the trustworthy ones, those people are different. Those people are genuinely selfless. They are not. This is not an indictment. This is mechanics. Every single decision every human being makes, including you, is routed through a single core filter. What does this mean for me? Even generosity, even sacrifice, even love. There is always a calculation happening. Sometimes it is conscious, often it is not. But it is always there. A parent who sacrifices for their child is, at the deepest level, satisfying a biological and emotional need so powerful that not satisfying it would cause them more pain than the sacrifice itself. They are choosing the option that costs them less psychological suffering. That is not cold. It is human. But it is self-interest. Machiavelli understood this with a clarity that made him infamous. He wrote that men will sooner forgive the killing of their father than the taking of their inheritance. Listen to that sentence again. He was not being provocative, he was being precise. He was saying that self-interest, specifically material, survival-level self-interest, is more reliably motivating than even the deepest emotional bonds. And 500 years of human history since he wrote that sentence have not disproved him. So what does this mean for you? It means that the moment you stop asking, does this person care about me? And start asking, what does this person gain from this relationship? Your confusion evaporates. You stop being hurt by people who prioritize themselves over you. You understand that they are not evil. They are operating their operating system. And here is the dangerous part of this shift. Once you understand that everyone is operating from self-interest, you stop being surprised by their choices. And when you stop being surprised, you stop being controlled by your own disappointment. Because disappointment is what happens when reality violates your expectations. Remove the false expectation and you remove the weapon. But this shift carries a deeper and more uncomfortable revelation, one that we will get to by the fourth shift. Because right now, you are probably still operating under a rule that is not just wrong. It is the single biggest reason you keep losing ground to people who play by a completely different set of rules. Shift 3. Fairness is a fable. They tell the powerless. You followed the process, you did the right things. You worked harder, stayed later, kept your head down and your standards high. You were a good teammate, a reliable colleague, a trustworthy partner. And someone else got the promotion, the recognition, the opportunity, the thing you had earned. And the word that rose in your chest was unfair. That word is the third cage. The belief that the world should operate on a merit-based, proportional system where virtue is rewarded and effort is recognized is one of the most expensive beliefs a person can carry. Not because it is naive, though it is, but because it causes you to play a game that does not exist, by rules that are only enforced against people who believe in them. Machiavelli watched the most powerful men in the Renaissance operate up close. What he observed was that outcomes have almost nothing to do with who deserves them. They have everything to do with who moves for them. Powerful people do not wait for recognition. They are positioned for it. Powerful people do not trust that good work will be noticed. They architect the conditions under which it cannot be ignored. Powerful people do not believe in fairness. They understand leverage, And leverage, not fairness, is what determines outcomes in every competitive environment you will ever enter. Think about the last time you were passed over for something you deserved. Now be honest with yourself. Not about whether you deserved it. You know you deserved it, but about this. Did you make it politically impossible for them to give it to someone else? Did you build the relationships that make your value undeniable to the people who decide? Did you speak up? Position yourself? Make your ambition legible to the people with the power to act on it? Or did you trust the process because the process is not neutral? The process was designed by people who understood leverage to produce outcomes that serve those who understand leverage. And everyone else calls it fair because they do not see the architecture underneath it. This shift is not about becoming cynical. It is about becoming literate. Stop reading the surface document and start reading the code beneath it. But, and this is important, understanding that fairness is a myth is not the same as accepting that power cannot be used ethically. There is a shift coming, the fifth one, that changes everything about how you use this knowledge. And what it reveals about the people around you will be the most uncomfortable thing in this entire video. Stay with me. Shift 4. The rules are selectively enforced. You know someone like this. They speak loudest about loyalty, then redefine the term when it becomes inconvenient for them. They champion honesty in public and operate in strategic ambiguity in private. They hold others to a moral framework they exempt themselves from, not consciously, not always, but systematically. And somehow it works for them. The rules in almost every institutional, social, and professional environment are not applied uniformly. They are applied downward, to people with less power and negotiated laterally among people with comparable power. And for people with enough power, the rules become suggestions. This is not a conspiracy. It is not even cynicism. It is just what happens when enforcement mechanisms are themselves held by people with interests. Machiavelli watched Pope Alexander VI, the Borgia Pope, break every canonical rule available to him, including the ones he publicly championed, and face almost no consequence, because his political position made accountability impractical for anyone who might attempt it. What Machiavelli took from this was not that rules are useless. It is these rules that function as tools of coordination among people who agree to be bound by them. The moment one party exits that agreement, without consequences, the framework changes for everyone inside it. The practical implication for your daily life is this: every time you sacrifice your own interests to follow a rule that others in the same environment are breaking, you are not being virtuous. You are being asymmetrically disadvantaged. You are paying a cost others are not paying for a system that does not guarantee the reward it implies. This does not mean break every rule. Machiavelli was not advocating for anarchy. He was advocating for a clear-eyed awareness of which rules are actually binding and which are performance. Because the people who hold real power in your life, in your workplace, in your social circle know the difference. And until you know it too, you will keep paying dues to a club that does not admit you. Shift 5. Your most comfortable relationships may be your most dangerous ones. This is the shift people resist the hardest, not because it is the most intellectually difficult, but if it is true, it changes the way you have to read people you love. Here it is. The people who pose the greatest risk to you are rarely strangers. They are not enemies, not rivals, not people you already distrust. The people who can do you the most damage are the ones you have given access. The ones who know your weak points because you shared them as vulnerabilities. The ones who understand your insecurities because you trusted them with your honesty. The ones inside the walls. Machiavelli wrote that a man who is surrounded by people who flatter him will never hear the truth he needs to hear, and will thus walk confidently into disasters that everyone around him could see coming. This is the hidden cost of comfort in relationships. When you are valued, when people around you want to maintain access to you, whether for emotional, social, or material reasons, they manage what they tell you. Not because they are evil. Honesty is a social risk, and social risk is something most people are wired to minimize. Think about the last time someone in your inner circle told you a hard truth. A real one. Not the kind of gentle redirection that maintains harmony, but the kind that actually costs them something to say because you might not like them for it. How long ago was that? Because the ratio of comfort to truth in your closest relationships is one of the most accurate diagnostic tools available for measuring how clear your perception of reality actually is. People who flatter you want something. People who manage your emotions want access. And people who tell you the truth, even when it disrupts the dynamic, those are the rarest and most valuable people in any life. Learn to tell them apart. But here is what makes this shift actually dangerous in the most productive sense. Once you see how proximity-based loyalty actually works, once you understand that closeness is often a function of what you provide rather than who you are, the next shift arrives, and it reframes weakness in a way that will permanently change how you present yourself to every room you ever walk into again. Shift 6. Vulnerability is not strength. Performed strength is not strength either. There is a third thing. You have been told two competing lies about strength. The first lie is the traditional one. Be hard. Show nothing. Dominate the room through volume and certainty. Reveal no doubt, no softness, no need. This is the model of strength that most people perform when they are afraid. The second lie arrived more recently, repackaged as wisdom. Be vulnerable. Share your struggles. Authentic weakness builds connection. Lean into your insecurities publicly and people will trust you. Both of these are under pressure, performance. And Machiavelli, ruthless as his reputation suggests, actually identified something more nuanced than either. He wrote that a leader must be loved if possible, but feared if necessary, and that the worst position of all is to be neither. But what people miss in that sentence is what he said next. The leader who earns both, not by demanding fear and not by manufacturing affection, but by being genuinely formidable in substance, is the one who sustains power through disruption. The third thing is neither softness nor hardness. It is earned density, the kind of presence that comes from someone who has done the internal work, who knows what they stand for, who does not need your approval to function, and who also, critically, does not need to announce any of this. Performed strength announces itself, it flexes, it speaks louder than necessary. It uses status displays as a substitute for genuine capability. Earned density does not perform, it simply is, and the room feels it without being able to explain why. Here is what this looks like in practice. You stop over-explaining your decisions to people who did not ask for an explanation. You stop apologizing for having standards. You stop preemptively softening your positions to avoid discomfort in the other person. You stop performing either the hard exterior or the sensitive interior for the sake of an audience. You simply occupy the space of someone who has already decided who they are. And this, more than any tactic, more than any strategy, more than any rule you could follow about body language or speech patterns or negotiation, is the foundation of everything else. Because tactics built on an unstable interior collapse under pressure. And the world will test you under pressure, it always does. But when you have this, when you have genuine interior authority, the last shift becomes not just possible, it becomes inevitable. Shift 7. You are always in the game. The only question is whether you are a player or a piece. Some of you have been watching this and thinking, I don't want to play games, I just want to be genuine. I want relationships that are real and work that matters and a life that isn't a competition. That feeling is valid. And it is also irrelevant to whether the game exists. Right now, in your workplace, people are positioning. They are building alliances, managing perceptions, creating narratives about their own value, and subtly undermining competing narratives. They are thinking 3 interactions ahead. They are not doing this because they are bad people. They are doing it because the environment rewards it. In your social world, people are curating. They are managing how they are seen, who they are seen with, and what associations they carry. They are investing social capital in some directions and withdrawing it from others. In every room where resources, whether money, status, opportunity, or attention, are distributed, there is a game. And the game does not pause because you have decided not to participate. Machiavelli wrote that a man ought to be both a fox and a lion. The fox sees the traps. The lion is not to be frightened into inaction once he sees them. Most intelligent people develop the fox. They see the traps. They watch the maneuvering. They understand what is happening. And then they do nothing, because doing something feels like becoming the thing they are watching. But that position, the clear-eyed observer who refuses to act, is not moral high ground. It is just losing with better optics. Because while you are watching and refusing, someone less capable than you is getting the outcome you should have gotten, simply because they were willing to move. So here is what changes when you make this shift. You stop waiting to be discovered. You stop trusting that merit creates its own visibility. You start being intentional about how you are perceived, what relationships you cultivate, and what opportunities you position yourself for before they are officially available. You start playing chess while other people are reacting move by move. You think about the room you are in, what game it is running, who the players are, what the currency is, and how you want to participate, not in a paranoid way, in a literate way. And the most profound change is internal. You stop feeling guilty for being strategic. You stop believing that prioritizing your own position makes you selfish because you now understand that everyone is prioritizing their own position. The people who pretend they are not are the most dangerous ones in the room because they are playing the game while performing not playing it, which is the most sophisticated move in the game. You, by contrast, are playing honestly. Strategically and honestly, you see the board, you move with intention, and you take responsibility for the outcomes. That is not manipulation, that is maturity. There is a word people use to discredit clarity. The word is cynical. When you start seeing power dynamics, when you stop believing everything you are told, when you begin to understand self-interest as the fundamental engine of human behavior, when you stop expecting fairness and start building leverage, someone somewhere will call you cynical. They will say you used to be different, more open, more trusting, warmer. What they mean is you used to be easier to manage. Machiavelli died in 1527, politically irrelevant, financially broken, exiled from the Florentine power he had spent his life navigating. The very people who had read his work, the princes and cardinals and merchants who had benefited from his counsel, denied knowing him publicly because the truth he had written was too uncomfortable to be associated with. He was not cynical. He was early. He saw what the game actually was, described it with precision, and paid the social cost of being the person who says the quiet part loudly. What he left behind, the prints, the discourses, the letters, is not a manual for becoming a tyrant. It is a field guide for people who would rather see clearly than stay comfortable. And that is exactly what these 7 shifts are. People don't mean what they say. Watch behavior, not words. Everyone operates from self-interest, everyone, including you. That is not a flaw to overcome, it is a force to understand. Fairness is not the operating principle of the world. Leverage is, and you are allowed to build it. The rules are selectively enforced. Knowing which rules are load-bearing and which are performance is the difference between someone who plays by the book and someone who writes it. The people closest to you are not necessarily the people who serve your clarity. Learn to tell the difference between comfort and truth. Vulnerability is not a strategy. Neither is hardness. Genuine interior authority, knowing who you are without needing to perform it, is the only foundation that holds. And you are in a game, whether you agreed to play or not. The only question is whether you are making moves or being moved. These 7 shifts did not arrive as information tonight. They arrived as a lens. And lenses, once fitted, cannot be unfitted. You are going to look at someone you trust and see, for the first time, the calculation underneath the warmth. You are going to sit in a meeting and hear an explanation and notice, without trying to, what behavior has said versus what this sentence is trying to say. You are going to feel someone attempt to manage your perception of them and know, with a quiet certainty, exactly what is happening. That is not paranoia. That is pattern recognition. And it will be lonely at first, because most people around you have not made these shifts. They are still reading the surface document. They are still trusting words over behavior. They are still waiting for the world to be fair to them. They are still confused about why things do not work out the way they were supposed to. And you will not be able to explain it to them without sounding dark, without sounding cold, without sounding like the kind of person they have been warned about. That is fine. Clarity has always been mistaken for cruelty by people who find comfort in confusion. Machiavelli was not dark. He was illuminated, and the darkness people accused him of was simply the shadow cast by a very bright light pointed at things people preferred to leave unexamined. You are that light now. So here's the only question that actually matters as you leave this video. Look at your life right now with all 7 shifts active. Who are you taking at their word when their behavior has been telling you a different story for months, maybe years? Where are you waiting for fairness in an environment that rewards leverage? What game have you been refusing to play, not because you are above it, but because playing felt like becoming something you did not want to be? And has that refusal served you? Or has it simply made you easier to overlook? And these are not rhetorical questions, they are diagnostics. And the answers are already inside you. You have known them for a while. You just did not have the framework to trust what you were seeing. Now you do. Write in the comments, I see the board now. Let's see how many people in this room have made the shift. Because these 7 upgrades are permanent. Your brain does not get to unlearn this. And the world from this moment on is going to feel different, not darker, clearer. There is more. The next video goes deeper into the specific mechanics of how power is actually accumulated, protected, and transferred in the environments you operate in every day. Do not skip it. See you there.